It's time for the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast. Powerful and liberating business strategies you can start in 5 minutes or less. Now, here's your host, Dean Soto.
Hey, this is Dean Soto, founder of freedomin5minutes.com. And we're here again with another Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast episode. Today's topic is this: perfecting and scaling a web development business. That and more coming up. All right. Well, welcome everybody to this episode. Really cool episode. Super excited about this one. We get to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, because I used to have one of these, but it was not nearly as good as this gentleman who we're going to be interviewing. So I get the pleasure of having Adrian Rodriguez on this podcast episode. He is the founder of anchoredweb.com, and he I can't wait to talk about what he's been doing. But he has a really cool web development agency that's very, very, very. I would want to say that he's able to create these very simple but powerful websites that have been in the commercial as well as the government side of things. And so I just want to say a warm welcome to Adrian. Adrian, how's it going, my man?
Very good, Dean. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, man. So let's talk about this. So I found you and reached out to you to be on this podcast, mainly because you know Joomla and Ed, which is always near and dear to my heart. I used to use Joomla a lot. And on top of that, your sites are they have a very beautiful yet very simple look to them, and so I just wanted to reach out to you and have you come on to talk about how you get started, how you're able to do what you do, and you've made some very, very big impacts even on the government side of things, which is very, very hard to do, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. I have a cool little surprise for everyone to hear. It's something that blew me away. So how in the heck did you get started with web development in the first place?
Well, I mean, there's a few different time frames in my life that I could go into that kind of explain how I got into web development. I guess the first proper website that I ever worked on was in about 1996 or 1997. I'm probably aging myself, but I was in high school at the time. And my friend had a band called 40 Watt Hype, and he had just started it in high school. We were best friends at the time, and we still are really good friends now. And so I just put together some HTML code that I had taught myself over the summer previously, and showed him something that, not really in a way of trying to get him to have this as his website. It was just something I thought, this could be an interesting direction for your site. And he took a look at that and said, yeah, I want that. Can that be my website?
Wow.
And so I said, oh, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it does work. And so that was his website. And it was, at the time, there wasn't many websites in general. I mean, there were a lot, but there weren't a lot of people doing it. And so when we put it up online, we had things like samples of his music on there. And of course, at the time, there was this thing called frames that nobody does now in HTML, but it was all about frames. So you'd have like a frame. It was like a little mini window within a window on your website. We had all these frames worked out. It was like the big, trend at the time. And it was fun. And I wish I had some sort of a screenshot of that website back then, because all the way from those years ago till today, I still maintain that website, and it's obviously gone through a lot of changes since then.
Wow.
But I really mean what I did back then, or at least show other people, look, I was doing this. Netscape.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's crazy. That'd be great. I was going to say, wait, do you still have just frames for that website?
I know. Well, I feel like somewhere maybe there's a file, because I tend to keep things, organized even 20 years ago. So I feel like maybe there was something I have somewhere on a disk, or maybe a floppy drive, maybe in the garage. But I don't know. But I will say that it was funny because that was not something I was trying to do at the time, like get into web development. And I really just did it for fun.
Mm.
And then about 2007, 2008, I started doing a website for myself because I was a journalist before that, before today's business, which is Anchored Web. I was a journalist, and so I sort of saw the way journalism was moving, which was away from print journalism and into the digital age.
Mm.
I didn't think the industry was moving fast enough, so I had all these great ideas about putting embedded maps in articles or crowdsourcing journalism and things like that. So I put together this website with all these cool tools and things that I just thought were really neat. And so what happened was, even though I really felt like that was a passion project for me, it wasn't making a lot of money. Partly because I didn't think journalism should make money in a sense. So there's the whole discussion there, but I wasn't really trying to make money in the advertising way. So I had to make money somehow. Since I was doing this, I just decided to take the leap and start my own business. Well, I wasn't really paying much attention, but people would say, "Hey, I like your website, but you know that piece there that you have on there where the event calendar automatically adds to a dynamic map and already changes colors and things like that. I wonder if you could do that for me." And I would say, well, I guess. I mean, what do you want me to build you some sort of a program for money or something? What are you going to give me money for it or something? And then it started just kind of like, at one point, it was like 6 months or 9 months into these calls, I said, wow, I really obviously am missing the boat on something that's happening. And I started leaning into that, and I found, yeah, that was a very much needed service that people would call me for. So, yeah,
That's
so
funny.
yeah, then I started kind of evolving, and eventually I founded Anchored Web Solutions in 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. And so we're coming up to the 10-year anniversary of my business. So I'm really proud of that, and I'm really excited about how things have evolved since those early days of not even realizing this was a business.
That's great. That is awesome, man. Well,
Yeah,
congratulations. That's awesome. Yeah,
perfect.
I love that. I love that story, especially when it's like you have all these people who are kind of slapping you upside the head saying, "Hey, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Can you do this for me?" You're like,
Yeah,
maybe there's a market here. I'm not sure. I've only been asked by 20 people. Uh,
right. And I do feel like a lot of the that type of that start was interesting because even today, I don't see myself as a hard a hard salesman, the
yeah,
type of person who's really going to push for you to sign on the dotted line or anything.
yeah,
I tend more to um, be more of a consultant or a collaborator with people. So if somebody calls me and they are interested in my services, that's great. And I really appreciate that. And I tell them so. But I also don't take that call with some sort of agenda. Well, this person's calling me, so therefore I need to make money off of them or
yeah,
something like that. Instead, I just sort of give them the time that they have to tell me about what they have going on. Usually it's a problem, and I'm sure usually I can solve it somehow with what I do, but sometimes it doesn't make sense for me to help. I mean, I could do a lot of things, but I sometimes I find myself asking people who call me if they've tried just doing a Facebook page or
yeah,
just trying an Instagram account. So
yeah.
sometimes, and I can help them set those things up, but they're really easy to do for a lot of people. So, I mean, most people have that stuff these days anyway.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like an interesting characteristic of my business is I'm sort of like the soft sale, I guess.
Yeah, which is cool. We got to talk about that prior to getting on this
Yeah.
podcast and how important that is. And I love that because yeah, you know right away when someone's trying to sell you something. Like I mean, that happens a lot.
Right. Well, I do understand that people do not like to be sold anything, but they do love to shop.
Yeah,
So,
it's true.
if you can change the dynamic with people to where they feel like they are having a shopping experience, that is a lot different than if they're being sold something.
Yep,
So,
yep,
there's some
exactly.
subtleties in there, but I definitely don't want. I want to present the menu and give them the chance to kind of run the show.
I love it.
Because I'll be doing enough running of the show once we get started. I'll be doing the project. I'll be building all the technical stuff and
Yep.
putting it all together for them. So
I love that. I love that. So, so Anchored Web, you had mentioned on the when we were talking prior to this that there's a reason for the name.
Yes.
So, why did you call it Anchored Web?
Well, when I started my business, the first thing, not the very first thing, but one of the things that I was interested in was making sure I created a brand that reflected the kind of business I was going to do. Also gave some people who saw it a reason to think about it beyond just glancing at it and moving on. And I wanted it to also be available as a domain name online and as a property on Facebook and Instagram. So, I mean, one of the things I do when I help new businesses that are starting out is I tell them, we need to come up with a good name, right? But it needs to not only be a good name, but it also needs to be available on Facebook and Twitter and stuff.
Yeah.
When you see things like Twilio or, Asana, all these different web apps, Google even, maybe not that so much, but a lot of these names are kind of weird, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's just not that many names that are out there anymore.
Yeah.
So Anchored Web came along because, first of all, I've been programming since I taught myself to program when I was 7, and the internet came along in the mid '90s, and I saw that there was this huge power of the internet, and so I was already learning about the internet from a philosophical standpoint. And one of the things that I learned about the internet early on, and it's kind of stuck with me, is that the internet is very powerful because it does something that books can't do, for instance, which is you can link from one page to another. And even though that sounds like a very simple concept, that hyperlinking from one area of knowledge to another area is very powerful, and you can do so many things with that. And it's actually built the internet. So in web code, that is called an anchor tag, and it's represented with the little brackets, and there's an A in there, and that means I'm going to give you a link, or it tells the browser, show this link here. So the anchor tag is really the essence of the internet in my view of it. So Anchored Web is a double entendre that not only speaks to the fact that I understand that the essence of the internet is the linking between different pages, but also that one thing that I found is that a lot of web developers, at least at the time when I started, and it's probably still the case to some extent, they kind of would be a younger person who would be really excited about putting together websites, but then would maybe next year they're excited about being in a band, or maybe then they're starting college or getting out of college. So I found that a lot of times I would be approached by people who say, I had a web person, and that person disappeared. I can't even call them anymore. I don't know where they are, or they're not interested anymore. And so Anchored Web Solutions is meant to also speak to the fact that I'm a reliable, steady, responsible, and knowledgeable expert for clients. And so it's Anchored Web Solutions. It speaks to both. So, again, if you can come up with a name for your business and it can kind of have multiple meanings that are wrapped up in one, it's great, because if somebody ever asks you, like you do, a whole spiel that sounds impressive when they talk about it.
No, it's that's actually really cool. Like because so with my business, I had the name Prosulum, which was, and it literally for years, almost a decade, I had Prosulum, and I still use it for my kind of business to business side of things. However, nobody knows what that is. It was I picked it because I couldn't think of anything else that didn't have that had a that did have a domain, and that basically no one was going to ever think of at all. But
Gotcha.
it did not. Nobody knows what that is, and that was a huge mistake. And it literally cost me thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, because because they don't even know what you have to sit there explaining. So it's not going to just grab someone's attention or anything like that. And so yeah, it's just that alone, having that good brand name like you have, what you already get these images of what it's supposed to be, right?
Right, exactly. To me, I believe, before I was a programmer, in my current career, I was a journalist and I was a writer. So words and how words fit together was really important to me and still is. So I do feel like, yes, the words you use, the name of your company will imprint something in somebody's mind, even if it's unintentional. So it could be that it's confusing. It could be that it's hard to spell. It could be that it sounds like another word, or maybe starts with something that is another word. And all those things, to me, they kind of, I'm not going to say that any business name is not potentially good. After all, we have things like eBay. As I said, we have all these crazy names for businesses, and they some of them do break through and become mainstream known entities.
Yeah.
So I would never say that anything you pick is not worth trying if you really love it. But for me, I was really interested in making sure people understood what they were reading and kind of could derive some sense of an understanding of it.
Yeah. Oh no, I love I love that, because to someone like me, I'm more of a systems, like, behind the scenes guy, and I never really put an importance on that at all up front. And
I see.
if I flipped it around, it would have been it would have been a lot easier. And so it's just cool. It's just neat seeing that was so important to you, because literally I not only did I have the opportunity cost, but I ended up having to have someone help me do that and pay them to help me to brand and help me to do all that stuff, because I didn't put an importance on it up front. And so it's really cool that you did that. So with Anchored Web right now, walk me through the process of how you actually run your business when it comes to I'm a new prospect. I just came to you. I need help with a website. In fact, let's just do the common. I had this guy over here and he wasn't very good and he wasn't dependable, yada yada yada. I need help. What do I do?
Well, the first thing I want to do is understand a little bit about the person that I'm talking to and the business or organization that they're representing. And so it's not, to me, it's not a small part of the process to kind of get a sense a little bit about the background. So it could be that they're in need of something that day because something fell through, and they looked me up and they calling me and they're saying it's an emergency. I need something on my website or else I'm in trouble or something. Well, that's fine, and I can try to get those things done. But usually, I can take a few minutes to say, okay, so tell me about your business. How did you sort of like what we're doing right now? You're asking me about my business. It's kind of what I do because I think business is about relationships, and if I don't understand where they're coming from, or if I don't think that they are interested in where I'm coming from, then I'm not sure that we're going to be a good fit. I get along well with a lot of people, but
like just with that, for example, like with that process, are you I know a lot of web companies. I know a lot of companies in general, myself included, back in the day, and I've gotten a lot better at this. Is that what happens if it's not a good fit? If you feel like this person is just not going to be, like, what do you do? What do you do in that particular situation?
Well, it's hard for me to tell if somebody's. I'm not going to take a call and then I don't see myself concluding during the middle of that call that this is not a fit.
Mm-hmm.
There have been times where I have told people, I appreciate that you're calling me and stuff, or that we're talking about it, but I don't think it's a good fit. And So usually what I would do is I would try to figure out, so say if the reason why we would not be a good fit would be because they have a different idea about how much it should cost or what the value is of what I do, or their timeline is different than what I can manage, things like that, to where it's more of an incompatibility for practical reasons. If it was just a personal incompatibility, I get along with people pretty well, and I even, I'm actually good with working with people of very challenging personalities as well. So I don't think it would be that, but yeah. So usually, that's what I'm trying to suss out is, well, what are you looking for? Well, I need a website. Okay, when do you need it? Right now, and how much are you willing to pay? $20. Okay, well, let's see. I still wouldn't. If somebody said to me, "I need a website and I only have $20, what do you got for me?" I don't need the $20 per se, but I would probably say, well, that's interesting. I think you could do these things. Maybe you shouldn't even pay me, but if you're really at that level, you could do this, this, and that.
Yeah.
$20.
Man.
But so what I'm looking for though is there's and this is where again I say it's about relationships, because even though I'm a very skilled and experienced web developer, one of the things about me is, as you can kind of hear from my background, I didn't, or maybe it's not obvious, I didn't go to school formally to learn programming. A lot of what I know and everything I do, which is for Joomla sites and WordPress and HTML and all these other, I can do database management, SEO, and all the good stuff. But I picked all the stuff up on my own over the years, and I feel like probably you could say that I have some level of education about it at this point, but certainly experience. But I do want my clients to understand that I am a unique, at least I have my own, I created my own path to where I am today. So if there's something that pops out that maybe a formally educated programmer should know, I may not know that thing. But it's not because I can't understand it. It may be that I just haven't encountered it.
Yeah.
After the last 10 or 20 years, I've probably encountered it all.
Yeah.
Or most things. But that's one of those things where I kind of want to tell people, hey, so what I do is I solve problems for you, and I usually learn to do it in the most efficient and proper way as possible. But it isn't 100% because I can't go back to a textbook that I read in college about how to do that. So that's what I want them to understand about me. And as long as they're like, hey, well, that's great. I mean, you seem like you know what you're talking about, and we're putting our trust into you.
Yeah.
Then great. And then I can start looking at whether they're trustworthy and whether I can put trust in them to, I don't know, pay the bills and stuff like that, or keep up with me, things like that. So those are things I'm really looking for. I actually this morning was doing a bunch of cold calling as well. That was really interesting.
So let's talk about that, because
Okay.
everyone, obviously, every single business needs that. So needs to do some kind of sales, marketing, things like that. What's your sales and marketing strategy? So it sounds like you do some cold calling. Give me an idea of how that goes.
Yes, well, okay, so cold calling is one of those things that you have to go in with the right mindset. Otherwise, you can feel really bad after a short amount of time.
I totally know that.
So the idea that I start with is that the rate of success, I mean, depending on how you define success, but the rate of success is generally, and this is not a hard number, this is like in my head so that I can approach it with a mental state that works, is like 3% or 1 to 3% out of. So if I call 100 people, maybe 3 of them will become a website. Maybe just one, or not even that. So what I do is I have my sources that I get business listings from, and then I call them one after the other, and I have a certain pitch, but the first and foremost thing I'm trying to do is find out if they have a website or are looking for a website. What value do they put on a website in their mind at least, and then if they are interested in getting into a conversation about it. And so for me, at least with my approach is not to go from never talked to this person before to selling or to signing on the dotted line. It's having that conversation, getting to know all of these people out here, and if they're interested, then we'll have further conversations, and I'll plug them into my customer relationship management system that lets me follow up in a week or 2 weeks or 6 months or whatever it is. So if I talk to somebody and they say, I am interested, but I'm just getting off the ground and I really don't need a website. I might need one in 6 months, but I'm not worried about it right now.
Yeah.
Again, I'm an easygoing guy, so I say, great, all right, well, just remember these are things about me that you can remember. Hopefully you take my info down, but I will call you back in March if that works for you, or I will call you back in August. And
I like that you frame that way too, because I've been guilty of it with my cold calling, warm calling, and so on, of just saying, okay, no problem, thanks. And it's not framed as in, I am going to call you in March, or I'm going to call you in April and see how things are going, because now you're not really a bother. You're literally, and if they say okay, they've given you permission. Mm-hmm. And it's much different frame. Obviously, they can completely ignore you, but at the same time, you're going to have a much higher success rate, I would imagine, doing that.
Yeah, a little bit more, because I look at it as planting seeds more so than, making sales or making a touchdown or something. So the metaphor I use is planting seeds. So if I let somebody know about me and they seem receptive to the idea, even if they're just being nice, at least they gave me a chance and to say what I am. And then I always plant that at the end where I say, we're going to have a follow-up, not whether you like it or not, but I'm going to follow up with you if that's okay with you at X point in the future. Yeah. So even if like this morning, one of the people I cold called, it just so happened that she knew one of my clients, and so there was a colleague in between us or in common with us, and so that totally greases the wheels or whatever. It totally helps when they go, oh, you work with them, that's my friend, great, and now I know you're somebody. But so she was, I feel, very interested by the end of that call. She had some other things that she had to, think about or whatever, which is fine. But she said, I'll give you a call in like a week, right? She said that to me. So I said, great, I'll talk to you soon. But what I told her, and this was somebody who already is interested, already committed to calling you back, I said, if I don't hear back from you in a week, I'll follow up, if you don't mind, on Thursday or something like that. She was like, oh yeah, great. And so again, we're sort of already in that collaborative mode that we need to be in if I'm going to work on her website anyway.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like, hey, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. You're your own person, and after all, I'm hoping to help you out. But I have my end of the bargain. Of course, I want to sell you a website, or I want to be able to make this website for money. And so if I don't hear back from you, you can expect that. And if you don't answer me then, maybe at least at that point, you kind of have the idea that I'm not just calling and seeing if you're interested. I'm also working with you and going a few steps, and you can take a few steps. And anytime you want to work with stuff with me, then I appreciate that. I never want to sit there and think, wow, I'm such an established, successful business that people are knocking down my door and I don't have to do anything. I just wait for them to come in. It kind of happens a lot when you do become successful. You have a lot of referrals, but I never let that that's why I do cold calls. I have plenty of business, but I like to always have more and more of these little seeds that go out and get planted, so that they can come to fruition in 3 months, 6 months, 2 years. I had a client email me this morning who's a local politician here, and asked me if we could get started on a new website. And this was somebody that I hadn't talked to in 4 years, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And so it was just one of those things where I always, 6 months or a year at a time, I would kind of email her, just letting her know I'm still around. I'm still doing things, and here's what's the latest. And I still think about you, not like that, but I mean, I still, you're not forgotten. And I just think it helps a lot because there she is calling me up or emailing me and asking me, how's it been going? Oh, okay. So you're looking for a new website. Great. Here I am. I'm anchored to this community. So
I love that. I love that. So kind of going into this one particular case that I wanted to share.
yeah.
What did I put? I want to make sure. Okay, cool. I have this. So you shared an audio from with me from actually my Fresno County sheriff, who the person who was interviewing her it was really surprising to hear what they said about the Fresno County the sheriff's website. So two things real quick. I'm going to ask you the first, and then I'm going to ask you the second, and then I'm going to play this thing. One, how in the heck did you even have the opportunity to build the Fresno kids? Because Fresno County sheriffs, I mean, that's a pretty big area, and it's government. Two very big things, like difficult things to get. How in the heck did you do that? So that's question number one. I'll ask question number two right after that.
Sure. Well, okay. So that was, yes, that was what that was that is one of my biggest clients now even. And so the sheriff's office came about, interestingly, oh, it's an interesting story. So my first connection to the sheriff's office was, that I was a newspaper journalist before I was a programmer, and I had written a story about a company that was a tech company, a satellite internet technology company here in the Valley. And so I would kind of find these interesting technology companies that were under the radar, I guess, and I would bring them to light in my reporting. And so that was really fun, and I would make a good impression for some reason or another on these companies. So one of the companies, or this company, was a husband and wife, and the wife was the sister of the public information officer at Fresno State. So the reason why it took about a year of talks with the PIO there, just for him to understand what I could do, how I could do it, how we might be able to structure a deal that could work for the sheriff's office. And so what they needed and what I ended up the reason why it ended up happening was because what they decided they needed was they wanted a website that was not only fully secure and ready at that level, but they also needed what they were interested in doing was having a media outlet that didn't necessarily compete like in the market with the Fresno Bee or with the local newspaper, but they didn't want their quotes to only be found in a newspaper that a reporter wrote a story for. So if they wanted to talk about a crime that happened and they wanted to talk about whatever they wanted to say, they wanted to have a platform online at least that could serve as a media outlet from their agency. So my background in journalism came in a huge advantage for me because I could describe to them and I could write out a proposal and I could technically create kind of website that would produce the media outlet impact on our community. So I created a site. On top of that, they had a lot of other requirements, but that was one of the big ones that made them sort of say, okay, if we work with you, we're going to get something that we can't really find anywhere else.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, and also like a year for a government organization that large is pretty quick if you think about it.
Right. Well, and then the guy who hired me, he's retired in the last 4 years or so, 3 or 4 years. So I think he was wanting to create a legacy for his time at the sheriff's office, at least in terms of that department he was running. And so there was some urgency there a little bit, but yes, it's a short amount of time and it's a long amount of time from a different perspective, but definitely, I also had to qualify to actually work there. I mean, I was hired as an independent contractor, but I have taken lie detector tests and polygraph and background checks and things like that. So there's a lot of security there. So that also helps if you're like don't have a record, I guess. If you're trustworthy and they can find you to be trustworthy, you can work with like big agencies and stuff. But you know, so much of my like that too. So much of what I do has to do with the fact that I have a writing background as well, because I can write a proposal that explains all these things, and it becomes not just me personally convincing people, but the document I created also can convince people, and I don't even have to be there.
Yeah. And
but it has to be done.
on top of that is, you know, how from that experience, you know how people digest information visually, and that's a huge thing. And in fact, in this particular thing that I'm going to play, that was totally unsolicited. So where is this quote from? Like,
that's a radio show. It's called Chris Daniel in the Morning, I think. Chris Daniel, and it's just it's a radio show. It's been on for a long time, and so they'll interview the sheriff once in a while. And it just was funny because somebody was listening to it, and then let me know that it was on the air. So I went really quickly to the web, and I went and found an archive of that clip, and I saved it. And I cut it out, and I used Audacity to make edits to the audio.
I can tell the audio is like awesome. so I'm gonna play this real quick. Now, keep in mind, you listening to the context. Like, this is a radio show host, and this is a government website. And if you put those two things together, one, no radio show host is gonna literally drool over a government website, because government websites tend to be really, really just absolutely horrendously bad, and nobody likes them. And there's a ton of money spent on these websites, and they end up being really crappy. So take a listen at this, and it just tells you how good not just the build is of the actual sites, but also how the information is digested. So check this out.
And Sheriff, by the way, where are we at on backlog these days on CCW permit?
Oh, we're doing much better. In fact, an update on that, Chris. This is the latest. The process is actually even easier, because now you can actually apply online. You don't have to print out the forms and bring them in. It actually eliminates one of the interviews. You can apply online. You get your appointment automatically when you do that on our website.
Cool.
It's FresnoSheriff.org, and you click on the Second Amendment icon, and the application process will walk you right through it online.
And speaking of that website, I've got to throw this out before we get to our next call, Sheriff. Perhaps, honest to God, and you know I love you, and I love complimenting you, but this is like, you have the best government website I have ever seen in terms of ease of access. And holy cow, you start doing some of those pull downs. How many things are out there to keep you safer, to get people behind bars that need to be behind bars, and so many other things. It's everything from house watches to I don't know what the reading posse, all the questions for CCW, the Explorer program. I mean, it just goes on and on. I don't know who the people are that are involved in keeping this thing up to speed, but it's got to be a lot, because that is a for as much as you have on there, it's not confusing.
Well, thank you, Chris. We have a great website, and again, it's Fresno Sheriff, all one word, .org, and there's so many resources. And kudos to Chris Curtis, who really started the process. He worked with our consultant. Adrian is our consultant, and he's still with us. And Tony Body is keeping it going. And it really is a great website. I'm really proud of that.
That's crazy. So absolutely crazy. So I'm just thinking of that radio show host. He's just in general. Why are they? You never hear that especially for a government site. So it was really cool to hear that. Like one of my next questions with that is what has that? How has that helped your business in general, working with government agencies? How did you? So we talked about that, but do you see yourself doing more for local government agencies like that?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I've pitched a few ideas. I was sort of in the running for a little bit of time with the Fresno Police Department on the basis of the fact that I work for the Sheriff's Office.
Yeah.
So there's that. I can't say that I've done a lot other than political, some websites I've done for politicians in this area. Totally open to it. I'm talking to the city of Clovis about a project right now that we might be doing. I don't tend to talk about things before they're official, but there's a couple things there. And I'm also working right now currently with Travis County in Texas on an overhaul of the clerk's office website. And so that should be launching pretty soon.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's helped so much because there's just so much that is said by telling people that I work with the Sheriff's Office. It says that I'm at least trustworthy to a law enforcement agency, that I can work with huge, large government. And it isn't untrue. It is totally true that working with law enforcement officials is not as easy to work with them because they're used to, they can tackle people on the street anytime they want. But they tend to, if they want something, they don't mind being loud about it or being forceful. It's part of their job description. So for me to be able to be diplomatic with them is something that I find something I'm good at. And I think that all those things are wrapped up in saying, hey, I work with the Sheriff's Office on their website and I kept it up all these years. So yeah, that's how it's helped me. And in terms of doing government jobs, yeah, it is monumentally harder because there's so much red tape to deal with, and there's bidding and things like that to do. But if you understand, to me, it's just a scaling up of the same thing I do when I do my phone calls, when I do a cold call to just a private business. It's sort of like, let me understand your situation and what you guys are trying to do, and if there's a way I can solve it, I will let you know. And so for the Sheriff's Office or any agency that I work with or small business, for small business, it might be like, hey, you give me this content and I'll be done with the website in a week or two, or maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And then we're launching the website. It's not that hard, but the same approach is taken for a large agency. Instead of 2 weeks, it's going to be 9 months or something.
Totally.
But I just lay it out and I say, hey, this is what it will take, and this is what I'll have to do, and these are going to be our challenges, and these are things I'm not good at that I might I might not be good enough to do these things. And then just by laying it all out there in a very concise way, gives them the chance to work on it from their end. And like I said, there's a lot of requirements that government agencies have, but it's not impossible to get through those if you are really stay attentive to the goal.
I love it. I love that. So I always ask this question. It is the anchor question to the podcast. No pun intended. No pun totally intended. So what is one 5-minute mindset shift or decision or something that really it didn't take much time for you to actually say, hey, I'm doing this, and that has delivered just a massive amount of results for you?
Well, there's a lot of things like that, but I think something that I look at is when I decided some years ago to change my, to adjust my philosophy on business, made a huge difference. It only took me a few minutes to kind of realize I needed to do things differently, and then I started putting those in action, and it's made such a difference. And that is that I used to think, when I first started business, I was very, as I was describing to you, I got into it for journalism reasons. When people asked me to do websites, I was sort of confused by the idea that somebody would pay me for something like software. I was just doing it for fun. So for me, it was about when I first started my web development business, the first thing I was trying to do was say, hey, I don't like to nickel and dime people. I only want to sell a website to people at a rate, at a price that they can see that's clear. I don't want to hide price tags. I was just very I was just very against businessy type stuff. I just wanted to do my thing. And yes, money was important. We all know that. So I knew that had to be part of it, but I was really trying to avoid the money part.
Yeah.
But at some point, again, all these things started coming along for me. I realized some years ago that I needed to change my thought process about what I was calling nickeling and diming people
Mm.
was not necessarily the only way to look at it. And so now I look back and with my current business, what I do now is I don't focus so much on the website project price as much as I do on the ongoing continuing services. And what that translates into from a top down look is more residual income, more passive income than having to work for it. So I enjoyed working for the money, going out and finding clients, and getting them to be convinced to get a website and things like that. That's all enjoyable to me, so that's good. But when I decided to change my attitude about this small amounts of money, it really opened a lot of things up, because really it's not so much that I charge nickel and diming, it's that the conversation shifted from, hey, you built my website 6 months ago and something's weird about it now.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to say, well, yeah, I can help you, but who are you again? And yes, I
Can I
help.
ask more? And
Yeah, now I have to.
awkward conversation. I used to do web development. I totally know that. Like I've had people where it's been like 2 or 3 years, and they do that. And I'm like, sometimes I'm just like, okay, I'll fix it if it's really quick.
Right. Yes. But saying, because look, sometimes I've had these calls where they say, this is how the conversation went. Now, I don't know if this was one of the conversations I had that made me realize I had to change my mind, but the conversation I had was like this. Hi, Adrian. You built my website. I really liked what you did, and now it's doing something weird. And I'd say, well, what's happening is I'm looking at your website, and your SSL is misconfigured, and your database storage is needs to be optimized. I say all these things, then they would say, yeah, I don't know anything of what you're saying, but are you saying that there's stuff that needs to be done? Do you do it? Who does it? Am I supposed to do it? You gave me this thing. It's called a website. Shouldn't it just work? And I go, no. Well, the world changes, and Google changed their algorithms and stuff. And so then they would say, well, how do I make you just always know how to make my site better? And I go, well, I do know how to make it better. You have to call me. And then I just realized, like, okay, that's not, they didn't want that, and I didn't want that. They didn't want their website to go down, and I didn't want to have those weird conversations where I had to explain to them a bunch of stuff about why their website changed in the first place. It's just the nature of websites. And so it was just a paradigm shift for me to say, this is a living, breathing thing, and realistically, we need to work on this. The work starts once you launch the site. And it didn't just change in the sense that I changed the business model that I was under, and I actually have clients as opposed to just customers. I also, it also forced me to get into all of the web services that are very important, like SEO and Google AdWords, things like that. So I kind of knew that stuff before, and I had even won a global competition for AdWords in 2009, but I wasn't really trying to push that end of the deal. I was just really happy to be able to make a cool website for Soto.
Oh, I love it, man. So how can people reach out to you if they need to get a site, if they need to do any update their site, if their last web developer suddenly left and they need something? How can people get a hold of you and so that they can work with you?
Yeah, in all the ways that you usually would. I mean, my website is anchoredweb.com, so ANCHOREDWEB.com. My phone number is 559-272-6837, which you can text to as well. Probably want to email me first or go to my website just so that I know who you are. But you can call me, I guess. And yeah, I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff. Right now on Google, I have an offer available to people that lasts until middle of July that gives them a free month of service if they sign up. and there's a certain way that you sign up there. So I'm really right now what I'm wanting to do is get some more. What I'm looking to do right now is offer my like world-class enterprise level services for really small companies as well, and I really want to try to get that level of professionalism and be able to package it and make it a small enough price that small businesses can also use it, because I have these great services that are for the larger scale, and I have my basic services that are for the small scale, and I'm trying to bridge those two so that way I can offer a good value to businesses. So right now I'm doing included is with hosting and domain name, hosting service and domain name is SSL and SEO, things like that. So if you need anything with the web, or even if you just have questions, if you call me and you get me into a conversation, I really do my best to try to give you as much information as I can and teach you about what you need to do. For me, my business philosophy is in terms of technology, the kind of things that I go for are any new innovative system that lets people have more information available to them so they can make better decisions on a daily basis for their life. So I've worked with nonprofits a lot on like things like Food to Share, which helps people find food opportunities, like maybe at the end of the day, Starbucks has to throw away all of its bakery products. Those sorts of things can be listed on the website and then claimed by food agencies that help feed the homeless, for instance. So those kind of projects are the ones that I really like to gravitate towards, because I care a lot about our community as well. So, but in general, if you call me about anything, I'm going to do my best to try to help you, or try to help you understand what I understand about the internet. To me, this is all really fun, and I really just appreciate the fact that I get to do this for a living. And so I just enjoy it.
That is awesome. I love it, man. And it's true. With us being on the phone, I could tell how sincere you are. We've been in business for, I've been, it's almost a decade as well. And you can very quickly tell when somebody is the type where they want to give value. And so when you were on the phone with me, when we were just talking back and forth, you can tell when someone wants to possibly make that sale and so on. And so for you, it was like, if it happens, it happens. We're just gonna talk, because we were talking for like 45 minutes or something like that. And so it's really, really cool what you do and how you do it, because you can tell that you really care about the other person's well-being, and it's pretty awesome. So guys. So first off, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you hunting me down and asking me to be on. This is a really great opportunity for people. So best of luck doing what you're doing.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it was my pleasure for sure. And so if you want to just definitely, seriously, massively increase your web presence, go check out anchoredweb.com, anchoredweb.com. You can also give Adrian a call. And that is the end of our show. It was awesome. It was just, I love the tips that Adrian shared, especially when it comes to the cold calling. That was kind of an unexpected little treat. So I appreciate you sharing that, because that's something that every business has to do at some point in time, whether it's now or in the future, and nobody likes doing it.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Just cool having that little reframe. So I appreciate that.
Awesome.
But yes, so this is the end of the podcast episode. If you want more of these episodes, definitely go to Google, type in Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast, or you can go to freedomin5minutes.com. You can also, if you want a virtual systems architect that will take what you're doing right now, document everything step by step, go check out freedomin5minutes.com. But for now, we will see you on the next Freedom in 5 Minutes episode.
Thanks for listening to the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast. Now, head over to www.freedomin5minutes.com and register for our free masterclass and discover how to start systemizing and automating your entire business 5 minutes at a time. We'll see you next time on the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast.